Hello everyone, and welcome back to another exciting video. The movie we have decided to put on trial this time is Alexander. Is it really as bad as the internet has made it out to be? The answer is yes. Yes it is. But we'll get to that in a second. First, we will go over the most glaring inaccuracies. Then we will see what the movie got right by going over the accuracies. We will be going over spoilers, so make sure you have already watched the movie before watching this video. So let's take a look at one of Oliver Stone's poorly received movies. When we first see Alexander at the beginning of the film, we start at the Battle of Gaugamela, which is, let's just say, kind of odd, as it steers away from talking about a lot of the great battles that happened at the beginning of Alexander's invasion of the Achaemenid Empire, which I think is kind of a mistake and waste of potential by not talking about these battles, at least in some capacity, because the Battle of the Granicus and Issus are some of Alexander's most legendary battles prior to the Battle of Gaugamela. Though I understand why Oliver Stone, the director of the film, would try to condense Alexander's life, as it would be kind of hard to fit all of these great battles into one movie and still make it feel cohesive. Also in real life, Darius III, King of Kings of the Achaemenid Empire, did not want to fight Alexander in a pitched battle at Gaugamela after his humiliation at the Battle of Issus, and Darius desperately tried to sue for peace before the battle by offering him huge sums of money, half of his empire, and one of his daughter's hands in marriage. I think Stone should have shown how desperate Darius was not to fight Alexander before the battle, like it was in real life, because I think it would have still fit well in the film for what he was going for. Then the scene where Alexander is almost killed by a Persian, but saved at the last moment by Clitus the Black as he chops off the Persian soldier's arm before he strikes Alexander. Something like this actually did happen in real life. However, Clitus did not save Alexander during the Battle of Gaugamela. It was actually at the Battle of the Granicus when Clitus saved him. And not only that, the Persian soldier who tried to kill Alexander in real life was actually a Persian satrap of Lydia and Ionia named Spithridites. Also, it is worth noting that throughout the film, Alexander and his generals refer to the Persian army as nothing but a bunch of unorganized barbarians. And it even goes further with it before the battle, showing the Persians marching with no good organization. This is not entirely true, even though the Macedonian and Greek army led by Alexander probably overall was better organized than the Persian army. The Persian army in real life had way tighter formations than depicted in the film. Especially the Persian army's cavalry formations were legendarily known as some of the most well-organized cavalry formations during that time period. Also, it was well known that the Persian armies during this time had a lot of Greek mercenaries in it. So Alexander's Macedonian and Greek army probably didn't think they were all barbarians because of those Greek mercenaries being in the Persian army. This next one really isn't an inaccuracy, but I was also pretty disappointed that at the end of the battle, when Darius flees and Alexander has to make a choice of either chasing down Darius or saving his general Parmenion and a portion of his army from being encircled by Persian forces. Of course, Alexander chooses to save his army like he did in real life, but they don't even show it. Alexander just rides off to go do it and it fades to black. I get it, like time constraints, maybe not enough budget, but you couldn't have put in like an extra minute of him just riding in to save Parmenion? I don't know. It could just be me. I think this is very much wasted potential. Then later on in a flashback, a young Alexander with his father, Philip II, go into a cave with paintings of Greek legends on it. There is no records of Philip ever teaching Alexander about Greek mythology and culture in this way, though Philip did have a big interest in these things and probably told Alexander about them when he was young. It is more likely that his tutor Aristotle taught him the most about Greek mythology and culture. Also later on, when Alexander takes Roxana as his wife, the film then goes on to state that this is very much a mysterious decision and that the marriage had no political significance. But that is not true at all, as it was politically significant. In reality, Roxana was the daughter of the Bactrian ruler Accuracies, and the marriage was to keep the peace after a Bactrian revolt, and to also gain more favor with the other Persians. After the marriage, the movie shows Alexander's mother, Olympias, played by Angelina Jolie, having one of her servants write out a message to Alexander pleading with him to go back to Babylon and reinforce his center, or to come back home and to forget about his ambition of conquering the rest of Persia. There is no evidence to suggest that his mother ever had a letter written saying any of this. In fact, Olympias was very public about supporting Alexander to keep chasing his ambition and success, though she was known to scheme a lot and could have had these thoughts privately. While the scene where Alexander uncovers an assassination plot against him is mostly accurate, with Philotas, who is Parmenian's son, being executed for being implicated in the plot. In real life, Alexander did not send Clytus and Antigonus to kill Parmenion like in the film. Instead, he sent his officers Cleander and Sitalces II. Also, probably the dumbest scene of Alexander is when they cross into India and they start fighting monkeys, and not knowing what monkeys are. This was definitely absurd to have. The Macedonians and Greeks not knowing what monkeys are? Because monkeys are referenced in Greek art and mythology even before Alexander's time, so they totally would have known about monkeys. Then we get a very important flashback scene where Philip II is assassinated by his own bodyguard, Pausanias of Orestes. This scene overall is accurate, but there are some things in the scene that are more up in the air, like Philip wearing a golden bay leaf laurel as a crown is still hotly debated by historians, with the question being, did he actually wear a crown like that regularly? As no primary sources have ever really indicated that being the case, though when archaeologists found what most historians assumed to be Philip II's tomb in 1977 in Vergina, Greece, they found a golden bay leaf laurel in his tomb, but many people think if he did wear one, it was probably for ceremonial purposes and not a part of his daily royal attire. Also, about 2 scenes later, Alexander is shown bursting into his mother's quarters in a fit of rage, thinking Olympias had his father killed. In real life, no one knows for sure if Pausanias assassinated Philip on his own or with help, as he could have just done it by himself, because many sources point out the fact that Attalus had his servants sexually assault Pausanias, and Philip, knowing about the matter, did not punish Attalus for it, giving Pausanias a motive to kill Philip. Though there is another conspiracy with some decent evidence that suggests Alexander and his mother were both in on the assassination. This conspiracy is backed up by the fact that Alexander publicly used this opportunity to blame it on the Persians, saying they funded the assassination, possibly trying to deflect any implication of his involvement. During the Battle of the Hydaspes scene, Alexander is shown being severely injured, having been shot by an arrow in the chest. This is not accurate, but Alexander did have the same exact injury during the siege of Malian City in 325 BCE, and was injured several times in different battles throughout his military military career. When Hephaestion, Alexander's best friend and general, dies, the film shows him blaming Roxana for his death. In actual history, Alexander did not blame Roxana for Hephaestion's death. Instead, a decent amount of sources suggest Alexander actually blamed the doctor treating him, named Glaucias, and Alexander had him executed. Our final inaccuracy comes at Alexander's death scene, as in the film, he is shown never uttering a single word before his death, as his generals urge him to name a successor to his new empire. In reality, Alexander did actually have final words, which were, "The empire goes to the strongest." The Battle of Gaugamela scene is fairly accurate. Pretty much all sources agree that Alexander gave a speech before the battle, like in the scene, but most sources are conflicted on what he actually said during that speech. The movie's depiction of the formation of the Macedonian phalanx is pretty good, and the Macedonian phalanx being in the center is accurate. The film shows Parmenion on the left, which is accurate, though for some reason nobody, including Parmenion, is on a horse, because they were a cavalry unit in real life, not an infantry unit, but whatever, probably didn't have enough horses in the budget. Alexander's on the right and actually riding a horse. They got that right, leading his shock cavalry. Good job, Oliver Stone, for getting that right. You get a point. Also, I noticed a lot of people reviewing this movie from a historical standpoint were really mad about the fact that Darius looked like a 20-year-old Chad, and that he shouldn't look that way, because the real Darius would have been in his late 40s. This doesn't bother me all that much, especially since Hollywood is known for casting actors and actresses at weird age ranges for different roles that might not suit that age range, but usually you can get away with it. But yeah, I think it would have been a little bit nicer if he was a little bit older, just for like that nice little detail. The part where it shows Alexander throwing a javelin at Darius did not happen, as Alexander did not get close enough to him in real life. This was most likely added for dramatic effect. It's fine, because in real life, Alexander did get close enough to him with his charge to collapse the Persian line, so Darius fled, which did happen, of course. Soon after the battle scene, there is a flashback of a young Alexander with his mom, who is holding snakes. This is a nice touch, actually, because Olympias was known to be obsessed and possess a lot of snakes. Though I have to mention this because it is so funny and out of place, is that Angelina is doing a very unnecessary Slavic accent throughout the entire movie. Then the narrator goes on to talk about how Alexander's mom would tell him that his actual father was Zeus, king of the Greek gods. And that is true, she did go around saying that about him. Another point for you, Mr. Stone. You're up to 2 points now. I'm keeping track. Of course, the scene that shows Alexander being tutored by Aristotle is accurate. The legendary part where Alexander tames his horse Bucephalus is very accurate and actually very well done. One of the better scenes in this film for sure. The movie then shows Alexander arriving in Babylon, and in reality, he did stay in Babylon for a little over a month. Though I think another wasted opportunity was not showing him stopping at other Persian cities like Susa, where Alexander famously sat on the royal throne of Persia, and the burning and pillaging of Persepolis. Also, while in Babylon, we get an accurate depiction of Alexander the Great flirting with a man, as he was known to be bisexual. Then another flashback. Oh boy, this movie's pacing is all over the place. There is just too many flashbacks that happen at random times, and it makes the story feel very incohesive. But anyways, in this flashback, Alexander's mom is telling him about how Philip's new wife, Cleopatra, is pregnant, and their child threatens to take his place in the line of succession of the Macedonian throne. This was a real threat to his ascension to the throne, as Cleopatra was the niece of Attalus, and the baby would have been full Macedonian too, giving the baby more legitimacy over Alexander, who was only half Macedonian. Then in another flashback, I know, bear with me here, it shows Alexander getting mad at Attalus for insulting his mother and toasting to Philip and his niece's legitimate sons over Alexander. This scene is very accurate, as this altercation actually did happen, though in real life the dialogue between them was slightly different, and some other minute details are a bit different. When Alexander kills Clytus in a drunken rage after Clytus insults him over his adoption of Persian customs is very accurate, even down to Alexander personally grabbing a spear from one of his guards and thrusting it through Clytus's chest. All of this really did happen. Philip's assassination by Pausanias is also very accurate, except for some small details I talked about earlier that are up in the air about his assassination. Pausanias really did get chased by men with spears and was killed. Even the scene where Alexander finally gives in to his army's demands is accurate, as they did want to return home to see their families and were very tired of campaigning after 13 long years of invading the Persian Empire. Honestly, for the most part, the film is pretty accurate, especially compared to the other films I have done on this channel, like The Patriot and Braveheart. Though this movie was a slog to get through, I'm not gonna lie. Usually I watch these movies all in one sitting, but I had to watch this one over the course of a few days because the character dialogue and acting in this movie is absolutely terrible. And not even in a bad, funny way, just a boring way. It's weird because the movie has a great cast of actors and actresses, like Colin Farrell, Anthony Hopkins, Angelina Jolie, Val Kilmer, are all good actors and actresses. I just think they had bad direction with their characters and were just winging it. The other weird thing, though, is that Oliver Stone is usually a good director. I love Platoon, and I consider it my favorite war movie of all time. And I also love Wall Street. He just really dropped the ball with this one, a huge wasted opportunity. There is just so many epic moments he did not include, and it is just sad how much of it does not make it into the film. Alright, well, ladies and gents, hopefully I never have to watch this film ever again. Did I leave out any inaccuracies or accuracies you know of? If so, let your brave Macedonian voices be heard in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.